Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video. This is part 2 of our series on how to use Method Manager. It's a 5-part series taking the use of Method Manager apart into a lot of detail so you can really understand how you can get the most out of it. So let's get on and have a look at this section then. So here we've got our Method Manager as it's just been opened, and we can see it's remembered the last method we used, which is the one we worked on yesterday, the copy of the 4-step demand process. And this is the way it always opens. Now, personally, I like to rearrange this window a little bit to get better use from it. So I can drag the corners around like this. And then I can also drag the divider here down, because this part of the window we're going to expand quite a lot during this session. So we can see the tree up here, and we're going to be focusing on these red and blue areas, the project structure and the stage structures in this session. And this is set up in the order that you would normally work through a new method. So we're going to start first of all with project structure. You see as I open it out, I've got 2 processes and my specialist products. And if I open my first process out, you can see I've got a set of sub-processes here. Now these are the most important things in today's activity, the sub-processes. These are the collections of documents that we want to establish that we're going to link to from our diagrams and menu items. So when somebody clicks on project concept on the diagram, they get this set of documents that we've defined here. Project concept, when they click on close, they get the close set we've defined. When they click on reporting sources, they get the reporting sources set. Your documents don't have to be grouped just by process. Yes, that's the most common way people do them because they're establishing a project management process usually. But it can be any collection of documents that you want to point somebody to. It could be all the guidance documents, it could be all the documents which are plan related, all the ones that need updating by certain audiences. It can be any combination of documents from the document set in the library for that project that you want to point somebody to. So that's what these sub-processes are used for. You can only link to a sub-process from the diagram. The process, the level above that, is really just a grouping mechanism. Here we wouldn't necessarily need one, but in many methods, more complex methods, you might have 40 or 50 sub-processes, and keeping them all organized together can be a bit of a challenge. So the process is there to help you group all that together. So working in these areas then, I mean here obviously we're working on a copy, we might expand and modify our method a little bit, but sometimes you'll work from a fresh one, a completely fresh one if you want to. So we simply click on our process. If we want to make some changes to it, we can obviously rename it. We could add a new process if we wanted to. I'm not going to bother with that in this example. We can add a new sub-process. We could of course delete our process or move it up and down in the order. So here we're going to focus on a new sub-process. So here it is, it added at the bottom of that process section. And I can of course click into it to rename it, and we're going to add a new process to this called a review meeting. Like that. So this is a collection of documents that we want to make available to people when they're undertaking a review meeting. So I've got my sub-process name. Now I need to think about which documents are going to go in it. And that's done by right-clicking on the sub-process. And you'll see here I've got add new document, add existing document. So the content that you deal with is made up of what's called documents. And the Method Manager establishes for you a library of those documents as you add them to the various sub-processes. And actually that's here. We can see this in the next major red item, which is project and specialist documents. This is an alphabetic library of all the documents that are used at the project level within this method. Normally when we're going through processes, we just see the ones that are relevant in each particular process, and we don't see all the rest of them. This is giving us that full library view, alphabetic organization of that content. So if I want to reuse one of these in my sub-process, I can just do add existing doc, and you'll see the menu it gives me is exactly the same as the list that we have here. So I'm going to include here benefits management, because that's often what we're doing when we're reviewing projects and how they've behaved later on. Have they delivered what we wanted? So we've got benefits management, and that will include a copy of what's the defined benefits management document with its contents, in this case a spreadsheet. And if I do the same sort of thing again, add existing document, so I'm going to use the end project report like that. And I might also want to see anything that's gone into any communications that have happened throughout the project. So I might also include my project management comms as well. Now that's empty. Of course, it's the same project management comms document that we use all the way through the process up here, for example. So whilst it's empty in the method template here, once we create a project from it and a user starts putting content in it through the earlier parts of the process, that will be reflected in the document in the review meeting at the end of the project management process, because it's the same document. It's just being used, reused in a number of places. So that's the model here. If you like, the arbiter of what is the document is this library view, and then we're seeing copies of it in each of the processes. We need to establish what the processes and sub-processes are up at the top here, so that's why it's the first thing in the order. But the sort of definitive version of what the documents are for the project is this one here. And of course, if I therefore add something to one of these, it's going to appear in all of the other places as well. It mirrors all that through for you. And the method, that's what Method Manager is doing for you, keeping all that stuff joined up and together so it works properly. And now you'll see why we've expanded the process, the menu here, so that we can see a lot of this at the same time, because you can get quite long lists in some of these things. So we have our review meeting now, and we've added some existing bits of content again, but we might also want to add a new document, something that didn't exist or wasn't being used in one of the earlier processes. And in this case, it's a new document like that, and we're going to just simply click in to rename it, and we're going to call it review materials, like that. So so these are my review materials. This is where I'm going to place them. Currently it's empty, but I might want to provide a template or two in here. So if I simply right click and do add existing file, it's going to take me here to my doc folder. Now, in the first session, we looked at the DNA and structure of a method template. This is our folder containing all the method template. We had a doc folder within it, which contains the standard set of templates that we are going to use when we create our new project. These are the things we're going to inject into the project. Now, you'll see I've already prepared a review agenda and put it here in this document folder, in the doc folder, so that I can use it in my project. So here we go, that's review agenda. I've added that, and it will now have updated that, of course, in the other places. So we can see here now review materials has got that in, showing in it. And that means now if we saved this, uploaded it to the server, created a project from it, we'd have a new sub-process and some new documents in it and some new files launched into that project. I can add as many things as I want to into one of these documents. I can have nothing, of course, and I can have as many other things as I want to. So let's do something slightly different this time. Let's do add existing file. But this isn't going to be a template we've already prepared. We're going to go and find a new file that we want to include. So I'm going to come to my desktop and my example files, and I'm going to include a new thing into here. So I've got this is a spreadsheet, and that will have the action of doing that will have brought that spreadsheet and put it into my doc folder, so it's kept all that in one place. We've got all the materials that we now need, say when we save and upload back to the server and create a new project, to put all that into that new project. The files are now included in that doc folder. Now, when I work on files from here in Method Manager, I'm working straight on that. There's no version control, there's no rolling back. I'm working straight on that file in the doc folder. So if I choose to rename this and call it review performance calculator, like that, that will have renamed the file in the doc folder accordingly. And so if I double click on it, it knows that's the file in the doc folder, and it can open it for me, and I can see it here, and I can make any changes I wanted to this file, and calculations and all the sorts of normal stuff that we do, and I'd simply save and close it, and that will then be an updated version of the file there that we can then upload back in to the server and create a new project from. In the first session we talked about the most common changes that people make to methods are revising their templates, adding new headings, changing bits of guidance text, etc. And that you don't need Method Manager for, you just work on the file. But if you need to add new files, or likewise take files away from your method so they're not launched into any new projects, you obviously need to come to Method Manager to do that. You need to change the instructions that are shipped with those set of files. But just working on the files here, from here is the same as working on them directly in the doc folder. We're changing that file. That's now the updated version that would be launched back into a new project. So this sort of stuff's pretty straightforward to do. Like I say, if you've already mapped out and worked out what your method's going to be, what the documents are, which templates you're going to have and where they're going to show, and you've got a set of those templates, this process is relatively quick. The problem is when you're doing it on the fly and you're doing something and then you're making changes and you're juggling things around. That's not quite so straightforward, because taking things out and moving them isn't as easy. We can't move blocks of things in one go. We can't add blocks of things either. It's a one item at a time, take out and put back in. So let's think about taking things out. Maybe as well as adding this new process, I'm going to simplify some of the rest of my process. So I'm going to come up here and say, well, actually, we've decided we're not going to do benefit management at the start for some reason. So I'm going to right click on benefit management and say, I want to remove that from here. Now I have two options. I can either remove the document from here, so leave it in all the other places where it should be, or completely remove the document. So I'm going to remove document from here. So now we no longer have benefits management in start, but we do still have it in its other places, like the review meeting. Other things though, I might want to remove more permanently. So if I do completely remove document, that will take it out of everywhere in the process. So let's do that, completely remove document. That's gone from here. We can also see it's gone from review meeting as well, where it was included. And when we come down here, we'll see it's also gone from the library. It has taken it out completely from the method. Now, there's no undo here. There's no warning messages. Method Manager is a tool for administrators, for high-level users. It's to be used with caution, because if I want to put that back now, I've got to go and add my new document and go and add it into each of the process steps. I have to be very careful about doing these things, because there's no simple fallback to the position we had before. So it's allowing me to do whatever I want to in terms of building these structures. I could take processes out. If we wanted to, I could go and remove one of my processes, my sub-processes in this case, or one of my overall processes. I can make changes however I need to here. So we're working on the structure, which is the sub-processes that we're going to use in navigation. I'm working on the documents and the templates that sit within those, and I'm establishing the materials that are going to get launched into my new project when I create it. Now when I'm in the main system and I do create new project and give it a name and press create, it uses this information at that point. It writes to the database what the process names are for this project, which documents should be shown in each of those processes, and it writes to the database, if you like, the documents and templates that it launches into that project so that it can provide that material. That's never used ever again in the life of that project. You only create the project once. It only establishes this structure once. So the process names that you give it at the start of the project, it will always have. There is no way of changing those through the life of the project. So sometimes we have methods which support multiple different sets of documents so that you can change the navigation on it and have the documents already there and the processes and sub-processes already there to flip it to a different type of project. For now, though, we're just establishing the principle of it creates these things at the beginning, they're never changed after that. So we're establishing this how we want it. We're just going to go File, Save at this point. Good to save it all periodically. We also have another, if you like, process down here called Specialist Products. Now, when we're using the main system, we'll see that some documents are context sensitive and they change depending on which sub-process you've selected in the diagram, and others are consistent all the way through, and that's the Specialist Products area. So this always gives you a fully consistent set of documents. They're always tagged on the end of every process display. Let's just go back and recap that in the main system. So when I come to my process, if I come to sprints, I see sprint documents, and we can alias actually this term at the end. In this case, it's called product increment details, and you'll see it's got those set of documents in it. If I come to launch, my launch process set, sub-process set are different, but my specialist set are the same, and whichever sub-process I select from the diagram, that will be the case. I'll see the appropriate set of context-sensitive project documents at the top. I will always see the same set of specialist products at the bottom. We colour them differently to make this distinction between them. So when we come back to here, we'll see the same idea being displayed. We've got specialist products. Now, these are just documents. So when we look at the document library, things like my images and guidance, etc., these are documents in the specialist products area, but they're all standard documents because they can be intermingled. So there's nothing to stop me right-clicking on specialist products and doing add existing document and pulling my review materials into there. That now means that review materials content will be visible to everybody, whichever process or sub-process they happen to have selected, because it's going to be shown at the bottom of that in the tree. Now, because this is a consistent view rather than a context-sensitive view, this also is able to support folders. So rather than just adding a new document or existing document, you see I can add a folder as well. And here we can start to establish more of a tree type structure to our data. Obviously what we see in the sub-processors, normal sub-processors, is a flat list of the documents that we've selected for that particular sub-process. But here we can have folders, so I could call this, for example, comms, and I could put inside that, if I wanted to, two new folders, so I could add a new folder called internal and another one called external. Like that. Now, you can't put files and content directly into a folder. You can always only ever put them into a document. So our traditional lowest level of folder will in fact be a document. So I would then add it to internal. I would, or let's do external. I'll do add new document. And this might be customer. And then the next one might be regulator. Like that. And this is where my content will actually sit. The folder structure is just allowing me to structure that more nicely. you can build. Often these structures are built into the project once it's created, but you can template them like this so that you can pre-establish the structures that you want. And these areas are really useful in keeping the things that are in processes up at the top around the management of the project, and then a lot of the materials, the day-to-day bulk materials, might end up down here in specialist. Because they're not particularly tied to one process or another, you might need to refer to them from everywhere. So this is allowing us to establish, whatever we want to into that process model. We've established the sub-processes we want to use, the documents and templates that are going to exist in them, a specialist product structure which might have a bit more detail in some other aspects as well, and that's all built in together, and it's all of course being mapped into here as well, so we can now see customer documents showing here, regulator documents showing here. With all of these, you can also then provide hints and tips. So if we just jump back to here a second, you see when I hover on user stories, it tells me this is the input to daily Scrum discussions, update as required including risks and issues. So it's giving me some advice about what I'm supposed to do with this document in this context. And that can vary. And when I come back up to here and look at the product backlog, it's saying here we should develop the product backlog. And then the guidance associated with it is going to be different at each different point, because we're doing different things with the same document at different points in the process. And of course, that information needs to be provided. So here you can see down in the information at the bottom here what hint and tip we're going to offer for that document in that process. The hints and tips don't live in the library information, because that document there could be used in multiple processes, and like I say, we need to give potentially different guidance on the document in each process. So it's got the information associated with it when we're here. Now this is really useful because we can obviously copy and paste the text from here. If we want to use the same text again somewhere else, we can do that. Let's come to our review meeting ones. You'll see they don't have anything yet. So we can give it a tip by coming down here, right clicking on it, go doc tip, and we can simply type our tip in, or we can paste it if we've got one available on paste to add. So often we follow a sort of standard format, something to do with, for example, like it's racy type format. So we might do this is an input document, and then return, and then some guidance about its use, and then our general sort of chit-chatty guidance material afterwards. This form needs a little bit of care though. If you type a lot, it looks like it wraps it, and we'll do some stuff so we get to there. It looks like it wraps it, but actually, unless you force a line break, it is just one long line of text. And when you come to look at them here, like we did here, what we want is really something that's more readable, like that, with some line breaks in. We don't want something that's one long line all the way across the screen. That just looks a bit strange. So you choose the line breaks you want, return some more text, return. You can have as many returns as you want if you want, like that, to give yourself a sizable block. You define what that's going to be. That's then stored here as part of the information. And like I say, if you want to have exactly the same thing somewhere else, you can then copy it like that, copy it out of there, and go and use it in one of the others instead. So I can then do doc tip, put the same thing in there if I want to, but maybe then make it slightly different. And we're just building that material up. That's a really useful little finishing touch to give people a good understanding of what they're supposed to be doing with the content that they've got in front of them. The other thing is order of documents. So within a particular sub-process, we normally order the documents in the order in which you might use them. So for example, you've got input documents at the top and output documents at the bottom. It just helps establish a logical flow for people. When they open the process, they probably start to look at the ones at the top first, and they see I've got some input documents, and then in the middle I've got some things I need to be doing, creating, collecting, etc. And then at the bottom I've got some output things I need to gather an approval, or I need to collect something or other, or update, or get a file approved. Those sorts of things. So establishing that arrangement is really helpful. The way that you normally do that is you right click on a file within the process, and you can move them up and down, or move to the top and move to the bottom. Now, you must have some established position against which to move them. So you must first move one of them to the top, and then you can move the others up or down. So you can move this one down, or move it up, or move it up, etc. But you must have an established position already. So something must have been moved to the top or to the bottom to put that about right, and then you can move the others around it. Again, a really useful finishing touch for making your method really useful. So we've done quite a lot here already, establishing that process structure, which sub-processes we're going to have, which documents in them, which templates, what they're going to look like, the hints and tips and the ordering, etc. Now it's time to have a think about stages. So let's just jump back to our live example here, and in fact we're going to jump to one of the ones that's the method we're working with. So we had 4-step demand. I'm just going to turn it into a project so we can look at the project side of it. And let's just reselect it again. Right, so here it is in project mode, and we've got our processes. We saw the things that we were going to get at project concept and at start and at close, and these are things we've been working on so far. These documents, though, are the project level documents. They are the things that control the project at each of those sub-process steps. They're not actually about what we're going to deliver in the project. So even if we come to deliver, the things that we're seeing are the project level things that we require for deliver. The inputs of PID, the updates we've got around controls and exception planning we might need to do, and comms and benefit management. There's nothing here about work packages and product descriptions and the actual day-to-day end delivery of the project. That's because in this method, these are in what we call stages. Stages are repeatable blocks of content that happen within a project. So some of our smaller projects don't use them because we just did one deliverable, so we don't need to break that stages idea out into multiple deliverables. Here, though, this project is more complicated and it has multiple deliverables. We can see a first stage of documentation has been added, and again, these are context-sensitive things. So when we're doing deliver stages, we're going to have the project level materials at the top, and then the things associated with the particular delivery that we're doing. This project's starting with a desk study, and so these are the things that we need for that desk study: a scope, a research plan, communications activity, through to acceptance. And these things will follow the same process structure as the project has. So now we've got these two items, let's just unpack them back to project concept. We can see at the concept phase we're doing lots of things about establishing the project, nothing at all about its delivery. At start, we're doing stuff to establish the project again, nothing at all about its delivery. When we come to manage stage, we are in the project level thinking about how we're going to break all those stages down, and we are defining the scope or accepting the completed stage, and then we're obviously doing the work in deliver stages, and in close, when we're wrapping up the overall project, we probably want to see the wrap-up information for each of those stages as well. So they're context sensitive, these documents. They're not the same documents that are in the project level, they're different. End study report, for example, a different one. Acceptance, a different one. But they're their own set of things, and they come and go like the same structure like documents do at the project level. With stages, you can add a number of stages to your project. So I'm just going to come up and add a couple of extra ones so we can see how that really works. So we've done our desk study. Now we want to come on to buy something that we've identified in our desk study. So I'm going to do manage stages. And this method has a number of different stages available to me. There's a purchase stage, so let's do that. So we'll do buy equipment. That's going that's going to be the name of my stage, and it's going to be a purchase type stage. So we've got that now. Now I can order these because I want them to appear in the order that we're actually going to do them rather than alphabetic. And then I might have another one. So I'm going to do one which is we're going to do some sort of experimentation. So we're going to have an agile type activity, and this is going to be product development, like that. So I've got my 3 stages that I'm going to have in this project, and of course we can add them as we need them. So there might end up being 10 stages in this project, but we're just going to add the first 3 for now. When I close and come back and refresh here, we'll see now I've got 3 different stages, and they'll each have their own documentation associated with them. They can be different from each other, but they will be consistent to similar stages. So if I added another product development stage, it would also have developed solution and acceptance in it. And these will all flow in exactly the same way, so we don't have anything early on, not really relevant. We get to defining things, and we can see it's dropping in templates and giving us the structure that we need to use for that particular activity. When we're doing things, again, we're seeing the things that are relevant in each of those areas. And like I say, they'll be identical against each other. So if I want to do another product development, we'll just come back and add a second product development stage. So I'm going to do product development, which was agile iteration, and we'll call it product development 2. We'll make it after product development 1, and we'll refresh here. And now you can see the tree starting to get a bit busy, but we're not yet generally working on all the stages at the same time. Here's my product development 2. It's going to have off the template exactly the same content as the other product development stage has. So this is allowing us to reflect the real complexity that happens in many projects. At the project level, it's actually relatively simple. You've got one set of registers, one set of plans, one set of PIDs, etc. But when you come down to the delivery activity, you're repeating a whole load of that communication and activity and documentation for the particular thing that you are doing. And this allows you to structure all that. So that's how we use stages. That's why they're really useful. You can get repeatable elements into your method. So let's come back and look at how they're managed here then in the method template. So like I say, this method template has 4 different types of stage. We can see those here. They're in blue, and they're 1 level down in the tree from the overall project structure. And that's a deliberate activity, because let's look at the couple that we're familiar with most already. So let's look at purchase. We can see it has its own sort of structure, a stage structure and a doc structure, much like we have up here in the project structure and the doc structure. So it's got its own sort of little set of library and process. And of course you'll see the processes are the same as the processes that we had in the main project. And you'll see they reflect. So even though we've only just added review meeting to the overall project structure, it's already reflected in the stage, because of course they must match. They can't be different process structures, because when we look in the main system, as I jump back, it needs to show us project level things and stage level things for that particular sub-process. So they have to be aligned. So Method Manager does that for you. And that means in a stage, I'm right-clicking on process and I'm getting nothing, because I can't delete, remove, add, reorder. When I click on my sub-process, what it offers me is adding the documents. You know, I can't change the structure from the stage. The structure is defined at the project level and inherited by the stages. That's always the case. So stages have to match, which is why we do our project stuff first, and then we work out what needs to be in our stages afterwards. And like I say, they're a very similar sort of idea. They don't have to be in the right order here, and we can see that we saw nothing at concept, nothing at start, and once we came into these areas we saw the bits that we wanted to see in those processes. And that was the same with, if we go and look at one of the others, the agile iteration. So let's just close that one down. Agile iteration, we've got the structure, and we've got the resources, the documents that are used throughout that with their templates in, etc. So if I wanted to, it's not really necessarily likely that that we're going to have something reviewing the particular deliverables or activities that happened in the delivery part of the project. But just say we did, I could come to here and do exactly the same thing. I'll add a new document and I'll say, we'll call it end user review. And that's going to be added now into the document model for this stage. It won't be added into the overall project document model, but it is for this stage. And if I added a new template into there, that would again go into my doc folder, because the doc folder contains all the templates that are used when you either create a project or inject a stage into a project. So the stages are really useful when you want to deal with a much more complex environments. And an interesting thing about the stage is that I could save this now, upload it to the server, create a new project from it, add a couple of stages, get on with delivering that, and then if at a later date I decide that I need a new stage, one that I didn't have before, say a audit stage or a review stage, I could come back to my method template, add a new stage type here, and then build in the documentation for that, reload my method to the server, and that new stage type will be available on my existing project, even though my existing project has been created for a long time. And when I add, say, I add another procurement stage to my project, if I've updated the templates that are used in that procurement stage, I will get those latest templates again. So you always get the material that's current for that point in time for the stage material. So if you've got a 30-stage project and they're all procurement activities, the procurement documentation you're using in stage 30 might be different to stage 1, because it's always the latest information. You keep your methods up to date with the latest templates, they'll always inject those. The project ones will always be whatever they were at the beginning of the project, unless you've manually changed them, because we only ever inject that content once. But stage content gets injected at the point where it's requested. So you'll always get the latest templates at that point. And the latest documents. It might have new documents in as well. It can't have new process structure though, because that has to match. So that's the sort of fundamental. Process structure never changes once you've created the project. The document structures for stages and the templates that are in those can do, if you want that to happen. So we're just going to have one last item here to think about, which is adding a new stage to this stage model. So we've currently got these 4 here. This is the first time we've gone on to look at template properties form. So file, template properties. There's a whole load of tabs here. We're going to deal with most of them in session 5, but we're just going to deal with one now, which is stage type. So I can create a new stage type. So I'm going to have customer audit stage. That's now done. It will have created here for me the standard materials for customer audit, and I can come into here and sync this together. So what I have to do is come to validate and Explorer, sync stage to project structure, and now it's got the process steps that I need sat ready for me and a blank library. and I can then come and start doing my add existing documents, set all that up as I want it to be, and then that will be available when I upload it to the server to add that new structure type onto my project if I want to. So let's just put one thing in here so we can see it when we do it. So I'm going to do add a new doc, and I'm just going to call it test, like that. I'm not going to put anything in it, just so that we can see it when we finish this session, these sessions, and we've saved our method, uploaded it to the server, and created one. We'll be able to add this additional stage type, and we'll see that we've got a test piece of work in there. This isn't the sort of thing you're going to be doing regularly, adding new stages, but it is the sort of thing that you can do, and like I say, it gives you a bit of an out for extending your model a little bit when you've got a long-term, long-created project. Okay, so we should always be saving our materials as we're working through. We're working on our updated method here, and that's all we're going to talk about in the process step. It's already been quite a long session. So that's session 2, process. The next session 3, we're going to talk about the navigation, which is obviously bringing us down to the further levels of the navigation tree here. Okay, I hope you found that helpful.